In that moment, a vague figure of a woman emerged from the pond, her face pale under the moonlight. Her soulless eyes stared directly at Tuyet and Thinh, a sinister smile on her lips. The ghostly woman's long, flowing hair twisted in the water, creating an enchanting image like silk ribbons floating on the surface. Horrifying haunting in the haunted pagoda. Chapter 2. In the haunting darkness, Tuyet and Thinh felt as if they were trapped in a nightmare come to life. They could not escape the mysterious and terrifying aura of the pagoda, and the more they tried to flee, the deeper they sank into an abyss of inescapable fear. As they walked through the dark corridors of the pagoda, the atmosphere grew denser and more tense. When they ventured deeper and passed by a pond, the terrifying events began to unfold. Tuyet and Thinh ran to the edge of the pagoda pond, where the tranquil surface seemed to hold an eerie calm. Under the crystalline moonlight, the pond's surface suddenly rippled, creating waves that seemed to reveal the dark secrets hidden beneath. In that moment, a vague figure of a woman emerged from the pond, her face pale under the moonlight. Her soulless eyes stared directly at Tuyet and Thinh, a sinister smile on her lips. The ghostly woman's long, flowing hair twisted in the water, creating an enchanting image like silk ribbons floating on the surface. Her face, appearing gentle, concealed a fierce and powerful presence, captivating anyone who looked at her. The moonlight illuminated the ghostly figure, creating a mesmerizing and terrifying scene. Tuyet and Thinh felt paralyzed with fear, facing a ghost, a supernatural force beyond their control. When the ghost moved closer, seemingly trying to pull them into the pond, they snapped back to reality, screaming in terror, their cries echoing through the dark forest. "Oh my God, a ghost, a ghost. Help me," they shouted, feeling trapped in a nightmare with a terrifying and malevolent ghost. As the words "a ghost" rang out, the surrounding space became even more silent and dark. A cold wind blew, and Tuyet and Thinh woke up and began to flee from the ghostly woman by the pond. Their steps quickened, the moonlight now their only hope in this nightmare. They ran through the dense, eerie trees, across paths and turns, distancing themselves from the light reflecting off the pond, which created a gloomy and mysterious scene. The image of the ghostly woman lingered in their minds. Each step was an effort to survive, to escape the ghost's threat. Suddenly, in the pitch-black darkness, a strange hand appeared from the door of a nearby room, like a bizarre invitation, stirring excitement in Tuyet and Thinh. Without hesitation, they ran into the room, unaware of what awaited them inside. As they entered, darkness engulfed them, with only a dim light from an oil lamp. Anxiety and fear enveloped them as they realized it was a room storing urns of ashes, the remains of the deceased. Tuyet and Thinh wondered who had called them in, feeling a deep chill from within. There was no one there, just a vast darkness and unexpected peace. Hiding in the room of ashes, Tuyet and Thinh felt desperate yet somewhat safe in the darkness. But suddenly, the dim light from the lamp flickered and waned, and the urns began to move. Ghostly spirits appeared beside the urns. Tuyet and Thinh felt trapped in a nightmare, trembling, not knowing what to do as they could not escape the surrounding darkness. The ghostly figures emerged from the ashes, wispy and smoky with glowing red eyes reflecting malevolence and horror. The room filled with eerie moans and cries, making the atmosphere more sinister and haunting. Each spirit had a different form, but all exuded ferocity and a thirst for revenge. They moved closer with unsteady steps, laughing with a haunting, eerie sound. Their laughter echoed in the room, creating a gloomy and terrifying atmosphere. Tuyet and Thinh felt overwhelmed by fear as they faced the existence of these terrifying spirits. The ghost's presence and threat made their escape seem weak and hopeless. They felt caught between two worlds, between life and death, between light and darkness. Could they escape this nightmare, or would they be swallowed by despair and chaos? In their panic, Tuyet and Thinh fled from the room of ashes, only to encounter another horrifying scene. Ghostly figures began to appear from the ancient trees surrounding the pagoda, like eerie shapes in the dense darkness. The red eyes of the ghosts reflected malevolence and horror. Their slender, wispy forms were both haunting and vengeful, their eyes full of a strong desire for revenge. Their swollen fingers like coiled shadows, and their every step created terrifying and eerie sounds. As they moved closer, the atmosphere grew heavy. Each breath they took carried the scent of death and despair, making the surroundings more horrific and frightening than ever.